Do not stand.
Okay. I'm going to go stand. I'm not going to stand this time. I'm going to sit down because I busted my ankle. And I'll explain where. So, actually.
Spoilers!
Sorry, I just came back from Japan and I kind of went nuts walking around the tournament. And so, yeah, I busted my ankle. Okay, I'll start off. First of all, my name is Arsenette. And there's, I think, only 2 people, well, except my family, 2 people that know. Has anybody heard of Rambling Rican? That's what I thought. I'm a blogger. I write a blog on Sasuke, specifically the Japanese one. And before I start, who's here for this? Just making sure before I start, this is not So we're talking about this, and let me put the mic back. Okay, so this is about the Japanese show, and let me see if I get this correct here. Okay. Who has seen American Ninja Warrior? That's what I figured. I just like getting a glimpse of what people have seen. Who has seen Ninja Warrior?
G4. Yeah, G4.
Who has seen Sasuke Rising? Okay, this is where, so as soon as G4 stops, that's where everybody stops. Okay, that's good. I want at least to get a general idea. Sasuke is produced by TBS and not the Turner version. This is Tokyo Broadcast Systems in Japan. And they show lots of other different anime, so I'm going to see how many can, well, obviously that's the easy one.
Please.
All the girls in the room.
And Brotherhood. Space Battleship Yamato.
There we go.
Oh,
I start off with the.
No one got that last year.
Last year was the same thing. Once I got to this one, they're like, "Oh, now I get it." It's just like it could have been a Gundam. I wasn't sure. This is my favorite show. And this is a newer one.
What is this?
Outbreak Company. If you haven't seen it, oh my God, you should. It's only 13 episodes, just watch. Okay, so bring it back. You guys are going to be awesome.
Why are they coming out of a pig's nose?
This is actually, that's their mascots. And
They're cute.
they are very cute. So they're called Boo and Bona. Okay.
I remember that.
There's a reason why I'm showing this. So everyone remembers this. Do you remember the Japanese name of this show? Okay, there we go. We got like 2 people. That's what it's actually called. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because that was also by TBS. So I'm going to do some math action here.
Geography.
Yes, Geography 101. If you were to land in Narita International Airport, you would be way over here.
Okay.
So to get into the middle of the city, which is all of this in Tokyo, if you're in a bus, it's about an hour and a half. If you're in a train, it's about 45 minutes. So that's what happened to me. So I'm like, yay, 13 hours on a plane, and then have to go over here. In fact, this is where I was.
Chickens on the Express.
If you take the Haneda Airport, you're down here. Either way, this is Chiba Prefecture. Any single time you hear prefecture, think state. So you land in a different state. So I'm from Philly, so you have me landing in Newark and have to drive all the way down to Philly. So this over here is where the tournament tapes. So people from out of town think this is Yokohama. This is actually Western Tokyo. From here to here, it's about an hour.
Okay.
About 40 minutes? Okay, well, we took the train, so it took forever. So, either way, this is what the area looks like. This is where they do the entire tournament. And pay attention to this right here. Right. Did you notice something missing from... There's no mountain. That's actually the name of this building, which is the satellite TBS office. That's the parking lot. So there's no mountain. In fact, Sasuke calls itself the Steel Castle. How they got Mount Midoriyama is because Midori means green and Yama means mountain. So why they called it Mount Green is beyond me, but that's it. So if anybody has seen MXC, this is where they put all of the obstacles. They were never on all at once, but this is a little bit closer. So that's where they jammed all of the different obstacles. Usually they ran it like, I would say about 4 or 5 weeks, and they would tape a few of them at a time. And not all of these obstacles were up at once. They would do for a few shows and then do another set, different types of shows. And so overall, this is where they would have been at one point or another throughout the entire, I think it was, what, 20 years that ran? Just about.
Long time.
The Sasuke version is a little bit different. Now, this is from Sasuke 21, and I got it from this thing. But in general, this is the final tower. It's now actually a little bit further back. That's the 3rd stage. That's the 2nd stage in a water pit. And that's the entire 1st stage. Now, things have changed, and I'll explain later when. All of this stuff is moved around. It's now over here somewhere, and you park over here, and you drive in this way. So, this is what it looks like. This was from Sasuke 27? Well, 2011, but Sasuke 27. I think this was the last one that America saw. Ninja Warrior 27. And this is the current one, Sasuke Rising. So you see slightly a little bit different. They move things over to the side. Tower's a little closer, and now they use that as all camera. So I'll start off showing a little bit of the obstacles, not all of them, because I actually watch more people than obstacles. Law grip, warp wall,
Double warp wall.
double warp wall. I'm sure most of the people have not seen gaping open mouths. This was from Sasuke 29, I think.
Did they keep it?
This year? No. Spoilers. Jumping spider. This is now jump hand kai. So you basically have to commit to either side, as opposed to the one where you go over. And yes, you can go on the netting, it's just a heck of a lot slower. But most people go underneath and, as usual, try not to touch the water. This is what it looks like at night. Kind of pretty.
Yeah.
Final tower, 1st stage, 2nd, and that's the 3rd. This is all residential areas, so I feel bad for those people. Although they all turn around going, did somebody win? I heard it. It's like, no, they're just testing it. Because that's always on. Like, at night, it's always on. And so it takes about 10 days to build a course. And that's about the shortest time period. And they test a couple days before, make sure all the lights are working, camera placement, yada, yada. The tournament now takes 2 days. It used to have one long 18-hour day and everybody fighting towards, it's almost day. Please hurry up and stop. Now what they do is they do the 1st and 2nd stage, depending on the weather, and then everybody goes to sleep. And then they come back at night the following day. Because the caliber of people have gotten a lot better now. So at this point, they're like, we're going to have a bunch of people in the 3rd stage, just commit to it. So that's what they do. So the 2nd day, lately it's been Saturday and a Sunday. So the Sunday is for 3rd stage and beyond. However, it's easier on the crew, so they actually have a night's sleep as opposed to working 10 straight days and then an 18-hour shoot. That's just a lot. Come on. Oops. Sorry.
Normal spider walk.
Yeah, spider walk. This is now the second stage. Actually, it's always been in the second stage, right?
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
version, yeah.
Okay. This was the
Double.
double salmon ladder.
Now
That's
this
the
is-
swap salmon ladder, and the way this works, or at least it's supposed to, you see how these things are actually in. As soon as he's on the first one, he jumps over, actually he came over from the first one, jumps across, and then the latches up at the top open, they jump over, switches around, and does that, I think, 3 times, and then continues on. Yeah, it was a little quirky because this bottom rung, for some reason, they had technical issues with it, so they hardwired it. So if anybody went sideways, that was an automatic disqualification, because they don't want people, it happened in training before where somebody slides over and their hand gets underneath. They don't want somebody's hands ripping off. So it's caused some issues and some disqualifications there. Everybody's like, oh, you can't do that to these people. And the walls are still there, and they still have the same space underneath. Everybody remembers what we call the Shin cliffhanger. This is gone, I don't even know how many phrases. So this is up to Sasuke. Was it 24?
Yeah. It was when you D1.
Yes, it was 24. And then this thing, the ultimate, that's the Japanese version. It's a much thinner rail in Japan. It's only 3 centimeters, which is about an inch and a half, as opposed to the one from Ninja Warrior, which is 5 centimeters, which is almost 2 full inches. So the Japanese are going, why is this harder? Oop. That's the new one. That's the crazy cliffhanger. So basically start off this way, and yes, you have to jump. Many a whiff has happened.
Without turning around.
Yeah, without, yeah. This was the spider flip. I know it as the heartbreaker, and I'll explain where. There we go. That was 22, I think it was. Yes. Pipe slider is back. One of the hardest obstacles, obviously. And now we're back in the beginning, so I'm going to try to do a quick retrospect. Sasuke was created by this man, Ushio Higuchi, back in 1997. And it was actually a spin-off of this show. It's called Kinikugu Banzuke, and some people might have recognized the G4 version, Ultimate Banzuke. So Sasuke was actually an indoor event, supposed to be a one-off event. It was only an hour, and had careers that launched. You probably don't recognize him without the gas station attendant, but that is Shingo. And most people don't recognize who this is. That's Ken Kasugi. Now, Ken Kasugi was huge in Japan. Now, I'm old enough to know his father. He was part of the huge kung fu, yeah, all the ninja movies from 1970s and 1980s. Mostly 80s? Yeah, Sho Kosugi. And that's the son of Sho Kosugi. But he had his own, basically, coming in this show. This was Sportsman #1. And this show ran actually a little bit longer than Sasuke and Banzuke. Had all the professionals going up against each other. You've had people like Michael Jordan to Olympic gold medalists from every other sport doing all different types of events. And Kane was the only actor to actually win against all the professional athletes. So that was his claim to fame. And they've made all kinds of, they've had Game Boy and even PS2 games with his face on it. So Sasuke was huge when he was on it. And Kunoichi had opened up maybe about 3 years from the beginning of Sasuke. So that's like 2000-ish is when they started. And most people know who she is. She's the 3-time champion of the Women of Ninja Warrior. So, yes, it's been canceled a couple times already. And it started off right...
Same
Yeah.
reaction as most people.
Yes, this is when he made the final stage. This was Kane in Sasuke 8. And most people remember it was freaking pouring. So he went up there and, of course, failed. And that was actually the last time anybody saw Kane Kasugi. There was a bunch of stuff going on in the background between, well, I'll explain in a couple minutes. And so Banzuke was huge. So to give you a perspective, and it's a little skewed because the rating is now a little bit different. American Ninja Warrior is doing 2s and 2.5s. At the time, Banzuke was pulling 30s on rating, which is ridiculous. 30% of all viewership was watching this show. And Sasuke was not doing that bad. It was around the 20s. This is Naoki Iketani. He was actually, this is a monster box if you've ever seen what it looks like. Think of vault, like from gymnastics. Only difference is we usually run, is it running this way? Yeah. And so what they did is they just keep adding rungs and jumping over them and jumping over. So he actually holds the Guinness World Record of jumping over. That's his name there in 23. This is when he was attempting 24. No one's actually beat 24. So that was also in Sportsman #1. That was a huge event during that time. That's Kane again. This is actually, I actually like this. It's called gallon throw. Take the barrel and you throw it over this wall, and the wall keeps getting higher and higher. And hopefully the thing doesn't land on your head, but the point is to throw it over the wall. This was one of the obstacles in Sportsman #1. And this was the date in infamy. So this is all in Midoriyama, the same lot. And this was what the course looked like. And I'm sorry for the photos that are of crappy variety, but these are the only ones that exist. What had happened was, this was one of the obstacles. There were 2 different people that were running this course up here. This is just, all the tents and stuff. What had happened was, someone was supposed to grab the ball and push it back up. Well, he slipped. There's water underneath here. And the ball ran over him. And so he ended up in the hospital. Now, TBS did not stop it, because they're thinking, well, maybe he's just, because he walked off out of his own accord, so they're like, okay, so he should be okay. The next one, not so much. He was paralyzed. So all of a sudden, Banzuke, 30, 31 in ratings, bye-bye. They're like, this show is just, it's going to kill somebody, so they cancel the show. Well, what happens to Sasuke is Sasuke is in this show as, just a satellite, because they had a whole bunch of different types of things, hand walking and whatever, and this was just one of the events. So this guy here, this is the director for the first 14 tournaments. And he was the SAD director of that show as well. So he's thinking, great, I'm just going to have to cancel the whole thing. So enter Shingo Yamamoto, who at this point had been in every tournament. And so he and Katsumi Yamada took him out to dinner and going, you know what, I have a better idea. Let Banzuke go. We'll take Sasuke and reform it. Because at this point, they had already lost King Kasugi. So we're just going to redo the whole thing, and we'll start off our own little room, our own little group. So in that little group came the first champion, Kazuhiko Akiyama, Toshihiro Takeda, Bunpei Shiratori, and Makoto Nagano. And that's how they started the Sasuke All-Star era. Had to reform after having the show canceled. They lost their main guy, King Kasugi, so they're like, what are we going to do now? So, voila, that's what they ended up doing. So this started around Sasuke, right after Sasuke 9, because I was right in between. So this group carried the show for about 10 years. So at this point, this is now about 3 or 4 years afterwards, about 6 tournaments in. you had, this is the creator of the show, decided to basically try to expand as much as possible. And one of them is Viking. And I wanted to show you this. And warning, the content's fine. The quality is crap.
On a shipwreck in the middle of Tokyo Bay, the stage has been set to test the limits of the human body and spirit. If you're not strong enough, you will fail. If you're not smart enough, you're gone. Many will try. With all their strength and will, only a few will succeed when they face Viking, the ultimate obstacle course challenge.
Some of the obstacles should look quite familiar. They were stolen from this show.
Dave, the first marine stage designed to weed out the field, and it usually does just that. It has a short time limit, 1 minute 50 seconds, 8 obstacles that test your strength, balance, and smarts. First up, you have to navigate the Odyssey, an 18-foot tilting circular platform. Next is the loading dock, where you must catch one 15-pound cargo bag and carry it across a narrow 25-foot-long plank, all while avoiding getting hit by other cargo bags. It doesn't always go so well. Then the castaway. Here you have to jump and grab a ball that's 6 feet in circumference and attach to a track and ride it over a 50-foot body of water. Then you have to let go just at the right time, or more often, not. Then the main deck. Here you must quickly choose either a large or narrow mast pole, creating a bridge and make it across safely. After that, the parley. This is a 4th grade level addition problem, but when the pressure's on, the answers often fall short. Then the treacherous cannonball, where you must quickly and gently step across 4 large rotating spheres that are suspended 6 feet over a body of water. Most people who make it this far in the course fail here, and failure hurts. Then you hit the swing mast, where you must throw a weighted rope over a beam suspended 20 feet in the air and swing 15 feet across another body of water. If the rope doesn't catch just right, down you go. The final challenge in the first marine stage, the captain's cabin, where you must climb the pegs of a rotating ship steering wheel that towers 20 feet in the air to stop the clock before it runs out. And if the course can't stop you, the clock can. So our competitor is having trouble in the early...
Okay, I'm gonna stop that there.
What network did that air on?
ESPN2.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, I was right before one of the sumo tournaments, because I used to watch sumo at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So this was on like at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, this looks interesting. And you had Makoto Nagano, actually. You had Shingo, Yamada, Nagano, Akiyama. This is actually Asaoka, but most people don't know who he is. This is from the early tournament. But there were a lot of the Sasuke competitors that were mixed in onto the onto Viking, because it ran right around the same time. In fact, 2005, that was right before Nagano's win, so he hadn't won at this point. And so this was on a different channel. It was called Fuji TV, which is on Odaiba Island. It's right in Tokyo Bay. The one, of course, Sasuke runs on TBS. So this ran, I think, 6 seasons total. 3 of them were regular tournament, and then the other 3 were, it was a family style, celebrity-ish, whatever. Didn't last long, but I loved this show. So I actually confused this show because maybe 6 months later on a different channel, just to show you, in Sasuke, this is what the cannonball run / spin bridge is what they call it now. Yeah, exactly. Completely different quality. And they kept changing them. He said, these spin even more. So 6 months later in G4, I see the same people, and they look like different obstacles. Oh, okay. So for about 3 months, I thought it was the same show. It wasn't until much later I realized it's the same people, just different network and different show entirely. Who remembers Midnight Spank? That is 10 times more than last year, trust me. So this is what the old Ninja Warrior logo is. Thank you, my brain's fried. Looked like before. He, William, used to, I gotta get this mouse out of the way. There we go. This is what it originally looked like, and they ran up to Sasuke 17 with this logo. There we go. In Japan, at that point, they had changed to this logo, Sasuke. They started around 16-ish, 17, I think, is when they changed to that logo. It's changed many times. Everything from a simple one to that was a lot more cool, actually. So starting off in the US, you started seeing the first American Ninja Challenge, ANC. These were the first 3. This was in December of 2007.
I remember they did a contest for it.
Yeah, for Sasuke 19. And this was Sasuke 20. Yeah, I guess that's where the numbers are different because it was they call it the 20th anniversary, although it doesn't quite fit, but you know what I'm talking about. At that point, it had only been 10 years. But still, that's how they did their numbers for the anniversary events. They do the attempts, the amount of people that, because there's always 100 people, 20 tournaments, 2,000. Come on. And then in March 2008, they changed to this logo, which now everybody knows. And this is when I started blogging, March of 2008. Woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, got an email going, do you have a program called Keyhole? Anybody just watched any kind of anime back in 2008? That was basically, it looked like a PowerPoint presentation, but you can hear it perfectly. And I'm like, I can see live television. So I'd get up at, early in the morning to watch the tournament as it aired in Japan. And so I started blogging from that point, going, hey, I get to see the tournaments live well before G4 picks it up. And so I started blogging, and it's become quite huge. So I've been doing this now for 7 years. Come on. Late 2006 is when they opened up a park in Odaiba. Odaiba is a man-made island right on Tokyo Bay. It's basically a whole bunch of touristy areas, I think a television station's there, and a whole bunch of, mall, restaurants, and whatever. But they had a small little area, basically the size of Chuck E. Cheese, shoved inside of a mall. And that was huge for everybody. This is one of the events that they had. This was actually done down in the lobby. But they would have all the competitors from Sportsman Number 1, from Sasuke, all promoting the show. So this was from Sportsman Number 1. He was a 3-time champion of that show. Same show that Ken Kusugi was in. And that's Shingo, that's Yamada. And of course the Sasuke All-Stars playing around. This was again in a mall. They had, all the kinds of sporting events, and you can take your kids. It was very expensive. Most of everything on the Odaiba Island is. But that went on for quite a while. I think it was a total of 3 years, and it was just a huge explosion because you had all of the foreigners now very interested in the show, and they're now marketable because, people recognize them in Japan, but foreigners know who they are. So they became huge overseas. So they also created Muscle Musical. Yes. That's, yeah. It makes sense when you look at it. And basically, think of it as not quite Cirque du Soleil. It was more, I don't even know how to explain it. It started off more as sort of like a gym troupe, and they did a lot of theater-type entertainment. They started off this way, and they ended up getting a lot more elaborate, almost like Cirque du Soleil. Sasuke Maniac, and now that I look at this, doesn't it look like Attack on Titan? I just noticed that now. This is just like, I don't know if I should have been afraid of this show or not. Sasuke Maniac was this half-hour show that, like 12:30 at night on a Sunday. Nobody watched it, except for us, because it ran during breakfast time on Sunday morning for us. So I watched this intently, and this is where I was introduced to this guy. This is Yuji Urushihara, 3 years before he won. This is Sasuke 21. And it was, what happened, remember, where you had all of these, smaller events and other things branching out. There was this Volkswagen appreciation something thing out in Hyogo Prefecture. And this was called Bug and Mickey. Yes, it's a strange name. But it was in the same prefecture that Yamada. Where's Yamada in this? He's actually not in this photo. Either way, this is Yuji. Then you have Nagano, Shingo, Takeda, Bunpei. This is Kawaguchi back here, Morimoto. These are all newer guys, at least for you guys. Ryo Matachi, who you should know by now from American Ninja Warrior. And that's our two-time grand champion. But this is how he got on the show. He beat all the All-Stars competing on this little tiny, county fair type event out in the middle of nowhere. So that's how he got his big break. And then the rest of them came through this event where, thank God for keyhole I was able to see. Yuji and Ryo are part of this group called the Unlimited Cliffers. They don't pronounce that way, but we'll leave for another time. And so all of them kept trying to get on the show. So Sasuke, a little bit different than American Ninja Warrior, they don't always have trials. Usually they send in their application, hope somebody looks at it and go, hey, this is great, and then invite them to the show. This is one of the rare times they actually had a full-blown trials. It technically ran for 1 day, but for us, they ran it on Sasuke Maniac for a total of 8 weeks. And it's funny now, because this is like a who's who. This is Ryo. Actually, his real name, and that's Yuji. These were all on this little tiny show in the summer of 2008. And that's Asa. Do you remember who Asa is? Probably only a couple people know. But all of these started in that one little event that started that summer, the same week. The same couple of months that I started blogging. And of course now they're all the new stars that have replaced the Sasuke All-Stars in terms of rank right now. So now mixing this now caught up, so you have the US sending now more athletes, and Levi, Brian, Mark, and then you remember these two, and Lucy Romberg. And this is what it used to look like, where you had the Americans going into the tournament more often. And I love this picture. The first 2 women ever to defeat the jumping spider in competition. Period. In fact, Lucy was the first one to do it, Japanese or American. That was in Sasuke 21. And the woman, she did her, Shimada did hers on Sasuke 22. So despite what NBC says, it's been beaten by women before, and an American at that. And yes, she's short. That's Kazuhiko Akiyama. That's the first champion. So this is now basically half of the new generation now, which unfortunately most of you don't know. And one of the main reasons why I decided to try to do this every year to introduce you guys to the new generation. But Muscle Park was getting actually fairly big. It was still expensive to run, and you would have occasional events between the All-Stars coming in, and these are all the new stars. At this point, they weren't anybody, going in, paying their regular ticket to see, and they would end up being, the face of Sasuke later. Around 2003, 8 or 9, I think it was 9, they expanded to have another muscle park in Sendai. Around this time, I started hearing rumors that something was not quite right going on with the show. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it. They seemed to be expanding a little too fast. And first kink in the armor was when Muscle Musical split. And it had huge impact on Sasuke. So half the group ended up staying with the regular show, and then the others created a new group called Padma. Now, why would a musical show be anything? That's the 3-time champion, and half of these are kunoichi competitors. So that directly affected it. So that was the last time up to that point that anybody would see kunoichi. They only tried it one more time, 3 years later, at a completely different format, and has not been seen since.
That sucked.
Yeah, but that's what caused that was what caused the rift, because you had an internal problem with, again, a musical show affecting what was going on with the main show. So hang on. So at this point now, G4 is getting really big. So they are now doing a lot more in Sasuke, and they started to send. This is the first year, this is ANW2, where they actually had regionals for the very first time. And this was in Venice Beach, and they actually sent 3 of the Japanese over. So at this point, this is Yuji Ushihara, who had just been crowned champion for Sasuke 24. And of course, this is 17's champion, Makoto Nagano. And then this is Okuyama, who is at that point, perennial 3rd stage competitor. Every single time he hit a tournament, he was always in the 3rd stage. Yeah. And that's what Venice Beach looked like, ANW2, the very first trials. Look where it is now. This is the first little show, and it's gotten so much bigger. So NBC takes over and completely changes the landscape. Because at that point, they changed, again, the logo, and I don't even know how many logos we've been through now. But I started noticing bigger issues again. I'm paying attention to what's going on in Japan. And then the following year, AW3, they didn't send any of the Japanese over. We just got their clothing, which seemed a little bit weird, going, are they not spending money on them anymore? So this is now Muscle Park. This was the last anniversary that they actually celebrated. About a month after that, they closed in Odaiba. They still kept the Sendai up one for about a year, and then they closed down as well. So this picture is interesting for me, not necessarily for the money. They had a prize for winning Sasuke, but it was only for the Americans, and that prize was only for the Americans. So, yeah.
That's not right.
Exactly. So me as a hardcore, I'm jumping up and down and screaming and going, what? So what's funny about this was Sasuke 27. Someone won, and it wasn't Japanese. He didn't get the money. So these were the 10 Americans that came in Sasuke 27. And what's interesting is that Sasuke 27 was aired in the United States early. It was ANW 3. It was aired in August of 2010. And it only showed the 10 Americans. There were 90 other people in that tournament. As you can tell, as one of the competitors, this is hanging on the side there. So what they did was something a little bit interesting. So they only showed it on NBC in August. And they showed only the ones that went from the 2nd stage to the 3rd stage. In fact, they only showed the top, the 10. And that's how you saw Drew Dreshel breaking his leg in 17 different directions. Let's see that again! Oh, I can't see it. It still hurts me. So, you know, there's Japanese over here. So if you kind of look around, you get to see it. Most people had no idea. And in fact, they made sure that the camera wasn't even showing the people waiting on the side. So when this was happening, oh, by the way, yeah, they did have numbers. This was still Sasuke. So when he got to the 2nd stage, this is what you saw on the Japanese broadcast. So if you're counting, there were 27 clears on the first stage. And they're showing all of them in the order that they ran. This is what the second stage actually looked like. Not just these guys. So they had to do basically 2 different productions on the same show, which was really odd. So when you got to the Ninja Warrior version, which aired 10 months afterwards, like they almost didn't share it, and they didn't show it at all. This was, I think, May of 2011 was the last time anybody saw Ninja Warrior. They only showed, what they did was they reorganized it by how fast they did it, their clear times. So they can hide the fact that they took out 9 Americans from the first stage. Because if you did it by actual order, then you would notice, Nan goes at the end here. It's just like, it was so weird. We're, of course, raging on the forums, and everybody's like freaking out going, you just edited history. Because that was freaking awesome. There were 9 Americans that actually passed the first stage in Sasuke 27. So the other thing is they reordered everything because Kano was actually number 1. He's a finalist from 23, if most people are still not familiar with the newer generation. He actually was number 1. They showed him, like, towards the end of the first stage, like, hey, like, why is it daytime? Because he was the first guy. So, as we're seeing this program, this is from Sasuke itself. This is now the 3rd stage. Okay? That's what the 3rd stage looked like in Sasuke 27, because Japan shows everybody. They don't care. It's their tournament. They show everybody. So, you see them intermix so you can tell what order that they were coming in. That's Nagano's reaction to, David Campbell whipping it. And that was actually finals. So again, remember, $500,000. These are the finalists. And oh, dang, somebody won. This was Yuji winning his 2nd time. So, again, the Americans were there. So we have 3 winners. One person won it twice, but this is the first winner, Kazuhiko Akiyama. 2nd winner, Makoto Nagano. 3rd winner, Yuji Urushihara from Sasuke 24 and Sasuke 27. So these are our 3 champions. So, back in most of the musical land, they expanded to Vegas at this point. In fact, they were there for a year. Yeah. So, back in Muscle Musical Land, there was a problem with the Muscle Musical Theater. You had a situation where the building became condemned. And apparently the management didn't want to do much about it, so they kind of closed it down for a little bit and, had them going to different places, hoping that it would correct itself. And it didn't, because at that point, everything that they had ever done, it was just, they were so far in the red, they were in the millions in debt. Just millions. So, 2nd cancellation. Oh. There's a story with this and the reason why I did this. They canceled the show right after Sasuke 27 because Monster 9, who was the company that was created by the founder, Ushio Higuchi, had gone bankrupt. So Sasuke 27 had, Ninja Warrior 27 had aired. Well, AEW was sitting there going, we're doing pretty good in the ratings. I think we can still do something. Well, nothing was happening in Sasuke, so they went ahead and did AEW 4. So I'm hearing rumors, because I always hear rumors, now that it was on there. So I sent, a tweet over to Matt Eisman, and he's like, nobody's coming from Japan. I was like, I swear it, he's definitely there. Go look for him. And I said, really? He's like, he's there. Look for him. I want a picture. So, lo and behold, he's walking around the parking lot, and there's Makoto Nagano. So he decides to, prank me and take a picture, and then so he goes, the rumors have been confirmed, and then sends me that photo. Wow. So I love it. And of course, he's an absolute giant. I mean, look at that. He is my height. I found out, I thought he was a little shorter. So if you want to know what he looks like in height, of course, half my weight. So this was actually the last time you saw Nagano in the United States. So I call these the bouncy balls because this is what you've seen what the originals look like, and then why do they bounce? It's a lot harder, but this is, you know, the same obstacle that you saw now. This is the third show that has the same obstacle, same name though, at least Spin Bridge. So I don't know if they're going to bring that back, but I'm sure it's going to be quite different. So AEW kept going, and back in Japan, they were trying to reorganize. So again, Shingo to the rescue, takes this guy out to dinner again. This was the director from, yes, Shingo is awesome. So he takes him out, and at this point, TBS was courting, this is the director of the first 14 tournaments. And he goes, hey, can he come back? And he goes, no. Like, no, I had a falling out with the owner before, not interested, I'm running my own company, I'm doing good. 6 months later, you want to do it again? No. And then finally, he goes, can you please come back? Oh my God. So he says, all right. So at this point, I'm not sure if anybody knows Real Escape game. Have you heard of it? The whole premise is basically they stick you in a room and they give you clues. The clues are very different each time. You have 1 hour to figure out the clues or you die. So what the director had done is he adapted it for television. So the way he did it, he had, you know, the fails and the passes already set up on the cart, and you would go with your smartphone and you would put in, you know, try to do all the clues. And at the end of it, if you got all the clues correctly, you can actually be in a drawing to get a car. So that became hugely popular, and he was nominated for an Emmy, International Emmy, last year. So finally he decides, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to come back. I'll do Sasuke 28, but I'm going to radically change everything because apparently if you guys failed, I don't want the same formula. So he changed it to Sasuke Rising. Basically, think of it, Phoenix rising from the ashes. So this is to delineate, this is not the Monster 9 era, back when, you know, with the old director. This is now the new director. So he retired the All-Stars. So this is basically the new generation saying goodbye to the old generation. And it was this huge event. And yes, Shingo always screws up the pictures for some reason. So it was a huge, huge event. And so this was the last time you saw Akiyama and Yamada actually compete. So they ended up, I'll explain later about the room, but they ended up having this event where everybody sat in a room and watched the event, and they recorded it, and they kind of superimposed it onto the program. It was really weird. But there's something, let me see, from that event. I want you to see.
楽しいですか？
今はあまり楽しくないです。やっぱり最初はやっぱりいい成績残して絶対頑張るぞって言ってた気持ちと体とも合ってて、それでいい成績も残せたりとかしてたんですけど、やっぱり今は成績残せてないし、やっぱりいけて当たり前って言われるのもすごいプレッシャーだし、やっぱりもう今はもうプレッシャーにも本当に押しつぶされそうで、もう落ちたくない、行きたい、応援に応えたい、もうそういうプレッシャーが、あともう年って言われて、もうそういうもうプレッシャーを受けるのがもうすごく辛い状態なんで、でも俺はそのプレッシャーに負けたくないからやっぱりもうちょっと頑張ってみようかなって思ってるんですけど、終わった時の気分としてはやっぱりなんでいけなかったかと、そこがもう一番悔しいし 考えるとこですね。やっぱり俺の中ではその終わった時点ではもう年かなと、もう足に来てて息が苦しくてもう無理かなと、この年のせいなんだっていう結論をつけたんですけど、やっぱり日が経つといやそうじゃないなって、いつもあれぐらい息は切れてるし疲れは来てる、そう考えるとやっぱりプレッシャーとか焦りとかで体の体勢がやっぱりうまくいってなかったのかなっていうことも考え出して、だからその辺のあたりのその答えがちょっとわからないんで、次もう一回挑戦してその答えを出そうかなとは思ってるんですけど。
奥さんなんて言うてるの？
嫁はもうすごい情けないもうすごい怖いぐらいねもう怒られて、でなんで時間あるのにやめるのと、なんで最後までやらないのともう本当に怒られました
長野君怒る人って今いないよね。
いやますよ。まあでも本当にね、嫁はやっぱり怒りながら応援してるんでね、もうその気持ちはもう本当に十分分かってるんで、素直にはいっていう感じなんですけど。
Oh, unfortunately, it's going to be spoilers from here on out.
Can I ask a question? Okay, beforehand, he was a captain of a fishing ship.
Yes. Mhm.
Does he still have the ship? Does he still go fishing?
I should explain that very shortly, actually. No problem. So again, this was the end of Sasuke 28, and on Sasuke 28, you had this person. Basically, what they did was they invited everybody back that had ever been on the show. And so they brought back, and this is Mika Izumi, who's the very first woman ever declared a warp wall. She did it back in Sasuke 11, I think it was. Yeah, way back when. NBC, of course, retcons that. Sure?
Sorry. I just want to know, it's kind of out of the blue, but
Sure.
I just want to know if you know if they're planning on bringing anything more to like us in New York. Like, are they planning on doing something a little closer to the east? Like, 'cause I know they have some on the east side so far.
A&W?
A&W, yeah.
Unfortunately, I can't answer that. I have no idea.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I don't know much about the American show.
So they're not linked at all. They completely are just.
They're completely different now.
Wow, and they're never gonna link in the future, or maybe do something else.
I hope they do in the future. It doesn't look like it right now.
They're bad.
I'll explain a little bit once we get to that point, but I'm hoping it doesn't look like it. So, at the end of, in fact, there's. That's the new opening, by the way. That's not the soundtrack. This is what I did.
またボタン押したいですけど、トータルビクトリーやりたいですけど、いやー今回はなかなかうまくいかないと思いますけど、行きたいですね。
サスケライズ6月27日夜7時。
What's the anime?
See if anybody got it.
Oh.
So, what was it?
So it's Chihai for everybody.
Yeah, she
Okay. So to answer your question, this is where I see, this is where A&W just went, all right, we're staying on the track, we're going. And then Sasuke Rising just went off in a different direction. And so they're now 2 separate shows, which is a shame, actually. This was the interviews after we're retiring the All-Stars, and Shingo's like, no, I'm coming back. And Nagano's coming back too. So, I actually have that. I wasn't sure if I was going to show it, but I thought this was a funny
これだ
interview.
けサスケに出てるけど本職は漁師フィッシャーマン。魔物っていうのはもう本当に自分の心の中にいると思う。もう本当に思う。トップを取る人、金メダルとかそういうトップを何年も取る人っていうのは本当にすごい尊敬できるって俺は自分では思う。そんなに気持ちを維持できるっていうことがすごいと思う。うちの嫁から飲みの心臓って言われるんです。お前男のくせに飲みの心臓かとよく言われるんですよ。でもね、もうでも案外スタート地点の音が鳴れば案外そのドキドキも収まってもう行くしかないっていう感じで言ってるんですけどね。自分の中で分かんないです。ただ言えるのがその低いそり立つ壁の走って掴む時は前かがみで掴むようになるんですよ。低いからその感覚が頭に入ったまんま次高いやつに行くもので、高いやつっていうのは足を逆に今度は先行させて体をちょっと倒してジャンプして掴むんですよ。それが前のその低いやつの感覚が残ったまんまでいってるから体が前に行ってしまって登れなかったっていうのがあるんじゃないかと。完全制覇した時に限って初めてなんかいけそうな気がしてって言ったんです。でも怖いです。逆にいけそうな気がして怖いっていうことを言ったんです。もう万全だからこそミスしたくない、ちょっとしたミスしたい、そういう怖さ私が感じるにはもう日本人とか私たちみたいに心がメンタルが弱くない。なんかアメリカ人の人たち本当にメンタル弱いところがあるぐらい気楽な気持ちでみんなやってるみたいな感じに見えます。まあ本人はどうかわかんないですよ。でもなんか見る限りでは本当に楽しんでやってるみたいな感じが多いです。楽しめることっていうことはプラス努力することにつながる。で努力すれば自信がつく。だから自信があれば楽しく気持ちも落ち着いてできる。頑張ります。ありがとうございます。
Yeah. Okay, where am I? Okay, so from now 29, we're up to 31. This was actually 29's tournament. They actually had tied to another event in Malaysia, which sadly only lasted only a year. But that's where basically there were a lot of interesting clears going on to the third stage that most people weren't expecting. I'm happy that Khan is back. This is Kenji Takahashi. This guy Morimoto, which at this point, if anybody has seen the USA versus World event from last year in NBC, he's gotten a lot bigger now. So he's also the first person ever to clear the crazy cliffhanger. And he got all the way to the pipe slider before failing. So on the first USA versus Japan, you had Yuji coming in against the Americans. This is the first time they ever did a collaboration like that. Sadly, you know how the Japanese went on that one. So this is the question on whether or not he has a ship. Makoto Nagano, he now has the 50th as opposed to the 28th, so he's upgraded a ship. So, and he's still doing the same stuff. Oh, yeah, let me move my mouse. So if anybody has any question what this is from, so this was over in Malaysia, and that sadly the only event that's ever happened. And the Americans actually did quite well in that event. They actually won it. So these are the last three remaining All-Stars that are still currently going to the event. So Sasuke 30, it's just a small commercial.
2014 7月3日夜7時
Okay. We should have time to see that. Okay, so Sasuke 30, the anniversary event happened last year, in May of last year. And in fact, just trying to show you a couple of things. Mr. Sasuke now is retired. He now has proteges that he is training. In fact, this one in particular has been doing quite well of late. So he's technically still in the tournament, he just doesn't compete anymore. Bunpei came back for one tournament, the 30th tournament. He was injured for the 31st, so he couldn't come back. But yeah, he's still kicking at 46. So this is the new generation, which, again, this is always sad because most of the new people don't know who these guys are. Slowly but surely, people are getting to know some of these guys going into American Ninja Warrior with the World event. Right now, that's the only gateway to the tournament in Japan. Drew Dressel, if anybody recognizes him from Miami, he actually competed in Sasuke 30 and in 31. He was one of the winners along with Mike Bernardo at that Malaysian event, and that's how there's a very small percentage of people that are actually still trickling through onto the main event. We're not sure what's going to happen next year, but we go year by year to see even if we can get one or two representatives from America on the tournament. So it's always hit or miss in the coin toss. I didn't even know until like a month before, okay, Drew is coming back. Okay, good, thank you. So that's from Sasuke 30. One of the rare times I actually get to see obstacles from the perspective of the competitors. That is what it looks like if you're staring down the third stage of Sasuke 30. Yeah, it's kind of, intimidating. So this is from the side. That's actually one of the testers passing the crazy cliffhanger. And in Sasuke 30, you had two finalists. Of course, you know Rita. And that's as far as Kawaguchi got. And that's as far as Ryo got on Sasuke 30. So going into A&W 6. This was last year. The world event. Morimoto replaced Yuji going in. And this is the European team. In fact, these are most of his pictures. Miska sitting in the middle. This is from TBS. And the introduction of USA versus World, which to my knowledge is happening again this year. So Yusuke is better known, at least in the United States, as the first man ever to clear America's third stage. And then a few minutes later, you had Ryo passing it as well. And that's them celebrating with Shingo, as usual, messing up the photos. So, going into this year, this was 3 weeks ago. So Sasuke 31 is gone. And yes, I just came back from it. This is usually at the shoe store that this is actually the distributor, so he's up in the company now. So, this tournament photos from the 31st, which I didn't take, so I won't get in trouble for these. Yeah, I'm not allowed to show my own photos.
Is there a reason why they did the tournament earlier this year?
It's the same every year.
A lot of ones were saying 6/27, 6/27, 6/31. June 27th, June 27th.
Well, what happened was they taped last year May 18th. They showed it in July.
Oh, okay.
Then same thing here where it was May 23rd and showing it again in July. And then before that was actually in December or something like that. I'm trying to remember. All these are mixing together. The difference is that AEW happens like 3 to 4 weeks after Sasuke. So it gets a little confusing because when they send people over, they're like, we don't want to spoil anything. So there's always like a year delay because Morimoto should have been in the one last 2 years before, but they have to wait until the following year because no one knew who he was. And so they're like, we don't want to spoil the tournament because it hasn't aired in Japan, and same thing happening again this year because it airs after it tapes. And AEW has a tendency to introduce, hey, this is, XYZ, and they don't like doing that unless they're going to do it in post-production. So they changed a little bit how the tournament looks like I mentioned before. They now have 2 sets of bleachers with the announcers. They moved everything over to the different side. They actually had a Nico Nico broadcast where you can actually see this thing being built in real time. It takes 4 hours, by the way. And they changed what this looked like. So they now have this huge jumbo screen, which luckily says their names in English, which is awesome because I'm sitting there going, who? Oh, Makoto Nagano. And they have chairs now. So whenever anybody clears, they'll run. In fact, I had it as the walk of fame and the walk of shame. So if somebody failed, they go behind the bleachers. And if they pass, they go in front of the bleachers, basically high-five everybody, and then take their seat. They definitely took this from A&W, where you would have them sitting there and you can see. Only difference is they'll just add more chairs if there's more people that pass, as opposed to A&W where there's a lock and you see whoever's the top 15 or 30 or whatever it is, the number that they do in each of the regionals. Old Blast from the Past is from Sasuke 1 through Sasuke 7. It's back in Sasuke 31. This is the tackle machine. Yes, this is all stage 1, by the way. So they moved it from the second stage. This is called a drum hopper. They showed it last year. And this is the new obstacle. It's called a sidewinder, and I'm not allowed to describe how you pass it. And this is the new vertical limit, where it now splits. And of course, this is the new tower. Most people recognize this from the same that Makoto Nagano had passed. This is a lot taller, and these things do not split anymore. Health and safety is like if somebody falls and they had it split in the, it's not going to happen. So it's hardwired now. So you can laugh at me, William. But yeah, I do a podcast over with William, so you can see that as well. And this is begin. Now, I have two things. One, I wanted to show you if anybody was interested, and you don't have to. There's a 10-minute video that TBS had produced of what it's like behind the scenes. If anybody was interested in seeing that, I can play it. And if not, I can start Q&A. Yes, no? Play it? Okay. Now, this is from the perspective of one of the competitors who was a comedian. So this is what it looks like when they're setting it up. This was Sasuke 30, by the way. This is from last year's tournament. That's registration. That starts at 8 o'clock in the morning, by the way. So you'll be following this guy in the next 8 minutes or so. So this is where they get the rundown of how you pass the first stage. They have all the testers going individually, one obstacle at a time, where people can ask questions, you know, can I do this, can I do that, and find out what is legal and what is not legal. And sadly, no, there's no English subtitles. So it's showing basically by time, you know, this is when the first person started. It's at 11 o'clock in the morning. This is the previous year that he had tried going on the tournament, and so they're just recapping his failure from before. So that's where he failed in 28. So at this particular point in Sasuke 30, this is the second time he showed up. He wanted to do a whole lot better. This is the rolling escargot, by the way. The first appearance was what? Sasuke 28? 27? It wasn't 27.
はい。いや、本当に結構今回やってきたんで、いや、夢の第一ステージ、これはクリアしたい。これも本当心から。
He's talking about how painful it is for him that he failed so badly in 28. I know some words here and there. This was actually the first clear. He was number 14. No music or anything. This is what it looks like in real life.
Yeah, 落ち着かないですね。楽屋に戻ってもそわそわしてました。
There's the VIP strap. No one else is in there.
本当に寂しい話なんですけど、すげえ冷め切ってるんですよ。多分今もそんなサスケ行ってるってこと分かってないかもしれない。それがそうなんですよ。
This is called the hedgehog. Also an area that I can't stand in. It's all blocked off. There's where the VIP stand.
いや、やっぱ体を動かしてる方がいい。
That's Mr. Sasuke.
七夕のなんかお願いがもう一度サスケに出たいという。
そうなんですよ。
握手してます。
いや、本当にありがとうございます。
すごいですね。この元の顔もなんか乗ってあったんで、
そうちょいちょい乗せてるんですけど。
で、元の顔知ってる？めっちゃ男前でめっちゃ可愛いね。
おっしゃいます。やばい山田さん。
何番で行かれるんですか？
今日79番です、ね。
あ、じゃあもう
そうです、ね。
本当にすぐですよね。このメイクだけは落とさないように。
そうです。頑張ります。
いやありがとう。もういえよとんでもない。いやそんなとんでもない。もうあえて光栄です。いや何をして。今も70番ぐらいですよね。
そうです。そろそろです。
本当ファーストはいけます。今回はヘッジホックだけですね。またみんなに聞いてヘッジホックはもう言ってくれるから通り道があるんですよ。絶対に走らない。ゆっくり歩いたらいいです。
At this point, the guy on the right is more upset with, like, am I going to fail that third obstacle again? So what he's telling him is that the hedgehog actually has a path. So you basically wait until you see it's wide enough, and as soon as you see it, you can just keep walking, and it'll spin itself out. So that's what he's basically trying to explain. So he doesn't want to fail again, so he's just telling him how to pass it.
でファーストクリアしてセカンドはメイク取りますよ。
これ水泳ぐやつあります？
あります。
あれこれ水に強いんですよこのメイク。
あ、そうなんですか。本当頑張ってください。お邪魔してもアウトな途中なんで。
とんでもない。
頑張って見させてもらい今から観客席まで。
これからもよろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。ありがとうございます。
あべ山田さんだ。やばいですね。やっぱオーラがありますね。独特のね。写真撮ったらお願いします。
So if you notice, it's a lot of waiting around. Actually, I think I twisted my ankle getting off this thing. Now that I think of it.
They let you run the obstacle course?
No, I was a guest. A competitor had invited me to be in his guest list. So the sucker told me to get on the, stage with him. So I'm sitting there holding his signs. And then of course when I look around, how do I get out from here? It's like a 4-foot drop. And so I tried shinning off the side, and I think that's might have before I did it. And I didn't feel it until the adrenaline wore off like 3 days later. At that point, my ankle was like this big. So of course they're now messing with him because he's freaking out about the rolling escargot, and they're merciless. Not the rolling escargot, the hedgehog. So yes, they're literally making fun of him right now.
はい。
That's Nagano, Takeda, and Shibuya on the right.
入るとこがあるから。左で。そうです。左で行ってください。朝の実況まで5秒前。4、3、2。
So they actually call out 3, 2, 1, where they want the entire crowd quiet so they can do this hand shot. And then they start. And you hear that with every single one. It's sort of like this start, and you stay quiet, and then up, and then back down again. For every single one. So they can make sure that they always have footage the same way for every single competitor. And then you fail. That's it.
Well, you want to like spoil it for us? Does it?
I can't spoil 30. Oh, for this one, for Sasuke 30, he got all the way to the last obstacle, which is called the lumberjack climb. And think of it as like a metal beam that you would see in construction where it has, like an I-beam. Vertically, you have to land on a water platform and then shimmy your weight up, pulling yourself up instead of the cargo nets. All of that's gone. It's just that big thing. Get up to the top, go across, and then hit the button. So he got halfway up, started to hear that the klaxon was blaring, and tried rushing, and then just dropped right into the water. So he tried getting revenge in this year, and July is where you have to wait whether or not he passed. So, are there any questions? Because this is the end of my prediction.
Where can we watch? When the Japanese watch it.
Now we watch it online. I'm part of a forums called Sasuke Maniac Forums, and usually a few of us would buy whatever streaming program is available at the time, and have everybody try to piggyback off of that one. Most people end up buying their own, but in general, that's what they usually do. So a few days before the event, they'll post, what the links are, and but up to this point, that's what we're stuck with until they decide to either send it back over to the United States to either air an Esquire or whatever, because G4 is now gone, or do online streaming, which at this point they don't seem at all interested in, because TBS in general doesn't do online streaming, and if it does, it's always with a lot of restrictions. So that's how we're going to be watching it in July. Sort of waking up at that time, which usually they start around 7 o'clock p.m. on their time, which would be 6 o'clock in the East morning. So that's what we're stuck with right now. And unless NBC actually changes their policy where they want to show the Japanese version again, I don't care if it's thrown in Esquire. They haven't decided to do that yet. Ever since A&W 4, they've split and they're no longer the official broadcaster. They severed that contract. Once Monster 9 had gone bankrupt, they took the opportunity, renegotiated the contract with TBS, and they decided they're not going to carry any of the old shows. So, in fact, I think the only once have they showed the old shows on Esquire, and they did it as a marathon once, sometime last year, and that was it. So, any other questions? Okay, well, thank you. What's up?
I don't think it was last year, a couple years ago, when they did it before American Ninja Warrior with
It was like a Sunday, I think it was, where it was a marathon from like noon to like 8 o'clock or something like that. And then after that, they had AW 1 through 4, I think. And that was pretty much it. I mean, I don't know why they haven't brought it over. My honest opinion is they don't want the competition, but I loved it when both shows were on and let the fans decide if they want to carry both or one or the other. But they haven't decided. Yeah, well, AW is quite popular, and they have full control over it, and they get full rights over it, so they don't have to split the profit with anybody. I mean, they do pay for the license, but it's marginal compared to what they get back from all the sponsors of advertising here. So from a financial standpoint, I can understand it. From a fan, it just sucks from our direction. So, okay. Any more questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for showing up. I appreciate it.